When you store objects in S3 buckets, you get to determine the storage tier or the storage class that object is stored in. And there are a variety of storage tiers depending on your needs, such as with frequently accessed data, or maybe you're uploading some content into S3 and you won't need to access it more than perhaps once every month or two, or maybe you need long-term archiving. Either way, we've got a number of different storage tiers or classes, which is the focus of this discussion. So let's take a look at it. Let's start here in the console by going to S3. What we're going to do is we're going to open up an existing S3 bucket, and it's called Budgets-East, in which we've got a folder in which we've then got objects or files that have been uploaded here into the cloud. Notice that we have a column over to the right called Storage Class, which indicates the current storage class or tier, in this case, Standard. If I were to click to open up one of those S3 objects, in the upper right, I could click the Object Actions button, and from here, among many other options, I could choose to edit the storage class. There's a note that says that when you do this, you're making a copy of the original with the new change, but you still have the original. And if you don't want to make a copy, then you can work with lifecycle rules to move, instead of copy, S3 objects into a different storage class. So we'll look at that in a different demo. For now, down below, I'm going to scroll down. Currently, the storage class is showing as Standard, frequently accessed data. Now, if you have unpredictable data usage patterns, you might select Intelligent Tiering, or for infrequent access, at the most maybe once a month for these objects, you could choose Standard IA, where IA stands for infrequently accessed. You could have it in one availability zone, so there's no replication. Or you've then got some variations on Glacier. Glacier, of course, is for long-term archiving. For example, Glacier Deep Archive would be archived data that you might have to access perhaps less than once a year. And it can take hours for that data to be retrieved to the point where you can actually access its content. Or you could choose something like Glacier Instant Retrieval, which allows you to get data back almost immediately. Naturally, there is a difference in the cost structure depending on the archiving or Glacier storage class that you select. Now, if we scroll back up at the top here before we change the storage class, notice that we also have an availability zones column showing us the number of availability zones where the data would be available. So with Standard, we have greater than or equal to 3 availability zones, whereas with one zone IA, we have 1 availability zone. So that means it's less resilient to a failure, such as a disruption within an AWS data center or within a region. You also have the minimum storage duration required for a given storage class. For example, Glacier Instant Retrieval requires a minimum of 90 days of storage. And if we scroll over a bit to the right, some of the other column headings include the minimum billable object size, any fees related to monitoring or auto tiering, and retrieval fees, such as per gigabyte of data that gets retrieved. So what we're doing here is looking at how to set the storage class manually. We'll take a look at some other options, such as when you are initially uploading content into a bucket. So let's say here we're going to choose Standard IA to change the storage class. Down at the bottom right, I'll choose Save Changes. And we get a message that says it successfully modified or edited that storage class. Okay, let's take a look at that by clicking the Close button in the upper right. And let's go back to our 2022 folder in our bucket, where notice now that Budget1TXT formerly had a storage class of Standard, now has a class of Standard-IA. If you were to try to select numerous files here and go to the Actions menu, some options will be unavailable, such as renaming the object, naturally, but notice you could edit the storage class on a larger scale for multiple items all at once. Let's say one zone IA, and I'll go down in the bottom right, choose Save Changes, and then I'll close out. And now the storage class reflects one zone IA. So we were able to do it for numerous objects in one shot. Let's just fire up Cloud Shell here and see how we might do that using the CLI. So the command is going to be AWS S3 CP for copy, because we're essentially copying the file with new changes. The source is S3://. Our bucket is called budgets-east. It's in the 2022 folder. The file is called budget1.txt. The target is going to be basically the same path. It's going to be S3:// budgets-east/2022, same file name, budget1.txt, but what we're going to do is we copy it is use the --storage- class parameter, and we're going to give it a value of Glacier so that it gets archived. Let's go ahead and press enter. Okay, so it looks like it's done. If we were to go back into the console and take a peek at our work, meaning let's navigate once again back to the Budgets East bucket, into the 2022 folder, notice that budget1.txt now has a storage class showing of Glacier Flexible Retrieval. Now, what about setting that during initial upload to the bucket? So if I were to click the Upload bucket, let's say I add a file. Now, when you've added one or more files or an entire folder structure, whatever the case might be, down below, as you are doing the upload process, you can go down under Properties, where among many other settings, you can determine the storage class right from the get-go. So if I know this will be infrequently accessed data, perhaps maybe once a month, then to save on storage costs, I might select Standard IA. All right, so if we go ahead and do that, I'm not going to change anything else about the properties of this upload. I'll just click the Upload button. So the upload succeeded. If we take a look at Budget 4, even from the object's view, we can see immediately the storage class was successfully set as Standard-IA during upload.